Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're looking at how companies are targeting customers online, and it's kind of wild how much marketing has changed.
It's true.
I feel like we used to just use Excel spreadsheets, and now it's like, whoa,
Yeah.
we're in the future.
Yeah, the sources we're looking at are like next level stuff.
Yeah, and the sources are talking about like two main approaches, profiling like who the customer is,
Right.
and then this behavioral targeting, which is more about what they do online.
Mhm.
So for this deep dive, I think let's get into that behavioral side.
Yeah, that's the really interesting one.
Yeah.
Wait, have you ever thought about how much information you're just like leaving as you go around the internet?
Right.
Like every click, every page you visit, every search,
Oh, yeah.
like a trail.
A digital trail?
Yeah, a digital trail. And there are companies out there that will pay people to install software on their computer
Oh, wow.
that tracks every single bit of it.
Wait, so people actually like agree to that?
They do.
That's kind of creepy when you think about it.
It is pretty wild.
Yeah,
But it's valuable information.
that's true.
It's called clickstream data.
Okay.
And it's like pure gold for marketers.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, imagine you're planning a trip,
Okay.
right? And you're on Expedia looking at flights.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're checking out Airbnbs. You're going to booking.com.
Right. Comparing prices.
Exactly. Each of those websites, they can see what you're doing on their site,
Right.
but they don't see the full picture.
Oh, so like Expedia sees that I'm looking at flights to Paris.
Yeah.
But they don't know that I actually end up booking a cute little Airbnb like right by the Eiffel Tower.
Exactly. And
Okay.
and that's where the limitations come in, because let's say Expedia sees you looking at flights to Paris multiple times,
Mm-hmm.
but you never actually book.
Right.
They might think, oh, this person's not really interested in going to Paris.
Right.
But what they don't see is all the other research you were doing. They don't know that you were just being a smart traveler and comparing all your options.
So Expedia thinks I'm not interested, but actually I am. I'm just, I want to find a good deal.
Exactly. You're a bargain hunter.
I am a bargain hunter. It's true. But okay, so if it's so valuable to track all of these clicks, how do they do it on such a huge scale? I mean, isn't that super expensive?
Well, it would be if they were relying only on that software.
Right.
But there's a cheaper way and a way more scalable way.
Okay.
It's cookies.
Oh, cookies, like the things that pop up on every website, like accept cookies.
Exactly. Do you ever read those pop-ups?
Not really. I just kind of click accept.
Most people don't.
Yeah.
But basically, cookies are these tiny little text files that websites store on your computer.
Oh, okay.
And they remember stuff about your visits.
Like what kind of stuff?
Oh, like your preferences, things you added to your cart, even like your login details sometimes.
So that's how like my shopping cart remembers all the stuff I wanted to buy.
Yep, that's exactly how it works.
Even if I close the window and come back, that's pretty handy.
It's pretty convenient.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. But I've also heard about those cookies being used to track people across like different websites, which that seems a little bit creepy.
Yeah, that's true. There are different types of cookies.
Okay.
First-party cookies are the site-specific ones.
Okay.
So those are mostly just trying to improve your experience on that one website.
Right.
But then you've got these third-party cookies, and those are the ones that can follow you around.
Oh, so those are the ones that are giving me the heebie-jeebies.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
So that's how those ads for like hiking boots seem to follow you everywhere you go.
Yeah, even though I was just on like one website about hiking, I'm suddenly seeing ads for hiking boots everywhere.
Right. So let's say you were on REI's website looking at hiking boots.
Yeah.
Google, through its display network,
Mm-hmm.
picks up on that with their third-party cookies, and then bam,
Wow.
you're seeing ads for hiking gear on completely unrelated websites.
So Google's like spying on my shopping habits to show me more ads.
Yeah.
It's impressive, but also a little unsettling.
It is a little big brothery.
It is, but I also heard that Google's trying to get rid of those third-party cookies.
Yeah, there's been a big push for what they're calling a cookieless world,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because of all these privacy concerns.
Mm-hmm.
And Google's working on phasing out third-party cookies in their Chrome browser. But it's been complicated.
Oh, really?
They've had to push back the deadline a couple of times now.
I see.
It's tough because, there are a lot of different stakeholders involved.
Right, like companies are probably freaking out a little.
Oh, yeah. They're scrambling to find other ways to target those ads.
Okay, so we've talked about how companies track our every move online, but what about our actual purchases? Surely they're using that information too, right?
Oh, yeah. Definitely purchase history. That's incredibly valuable
Okay.
for understanding customer behavior.
Right.
And our sources, they highlight this framework called RFM that's specifically designed to analyze this kind of data.
RFM, what's that stand for?
It stands for recency, frequency, and monetary value.
Okay, and what does that mean? Like, how does that work?
So it's basically a way to segment customers
Mm-hmm.
based on like how recently they bought something, how often they buy from you, and how much money they spend.
Okay, I think I get it, but I'm a very visual learner. Can you give me an example?
Okay, yeah, so the source material uses a very simple example with just 4 fictional customers.
Okay.
Andy, Betsy, Crystal, and David.
Okay.
And they're all buying coffee
Okay.
from the same online store.
Mm-hmm.
Over 100 days, they each make a few purchases, but at different times and with different frequencies.
Okay.
So Andy buys a bag of coffee every 2 weeks.
Okay. Andy's like the regular.
Yeah, he is.
Okay.
Betsy buys a bag every month.
Okay, once a month, Betsy.
Yeah. Then you've got Crystal, who buys 3 bags all up front.
Okay, Crystal's stocking up.
Right. And then she doesn't buy anything else.
Okay.
And then there's David, who buys 2 bags,
Mm-hmm.
then 1 bag a month later, and then 2 more bags a couple weeks after that.
Mm-hmm. So David's like the wild card.
Yeah. Unpredictable.
Okay, so we've got Andy, the regular, Betsy, the once-a-monther, Crystal, the bulk buyer, and David, the wild card, just based on that. Who do you think is most likely to still be an active customer?
That's a good question.
Right.
I guess it would depend on a lot of things.
True.
Like the specific products and what their preferences are.
Right.
But I'd say Andy's probably the safest bet.
Yeah.
He's got a consistent pattern, and he bought something recently.
You read my mind. That's exactly right. And that's what this RFM framework is all about.
Yeah.
Recency. So how recently they bought something.
Yeah.
Frequency, how often they buy from you, and then monetary, how much they spend.
Exactly.
It's so interesting that we do this kind of intuitively in our everyday lives, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Like if you think about a coffee shop you go to regularly,
Yeah.
the barista probably like recognizes you and knows your order.
Yeah.
They're kind of using the principles of RFM without even realizing it.
Yeah. They are subconsciously segmenting their customers.
It's true. Wow. Okay. So RFM helps companies figure out who their best customers are. But what about predicting what people might want to buy next? That's where things get really like futuristic, right?
Yeah. That's the Netflix effect.
Yeah.
Like, how do they know what I want to watch? Like, it was like magic. Well, it's not magic. It's data science.
Okay.
It's called collaborative filtering.
Collaborative filtering. What is that?
So imagine you have 7 people,
Okay.
and they've each watched and rated 6 different movies.
Oh, okay.
Now, you want to predict how one of those people, we'll call her Gabriel, how she'll rate the movie Nope, even though she hasn't seen it yet.
Okay. So we want to know if Gabriel like, nope.
Right.
Got it.
So how do we do that well with collaborative filtering instead of just looking at what Gabriel has rated in the past?
Okay.
We look at the ratings of other users who have rated movies similarly to Gabriel.
So we're looking for people who have similar taste.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's not just about liking the same things.
Right.
It's about having a similar pattern of likes and dislikes.
Okay. So like, even if 2 people have totally different taste in movies overall,
Right.
they could still be considered similar if they tend to agree on which movies are good and which ones are bad.
Exactly. It's the relative difference in their ratings that matters.
I see.
And the source material, it uses this analogy of like physical distance to explain this.
Oh, okay.
Like imagine 2 points on a map.
Okay.
The farther apart those 2 points are, the less similar those 2 things are.
Okay.
And the closer they are, the more similar they are.
So if 2 people consistently rate movies in the same way,
Right.
they're like 2 points that are super close together on this map.
Exactly. And you can actually quantify that distance between their ratings
Oh, wow.
using a mathematical formula.
So there's math involved.
Oh, yeah. It gets a little complex, but the basic idea is that it's taking into account the difference in their ratings for each movie they've both seen.
Okay, so there's some serious number crunching happening behind the scenes.
There is some serious data science going on.
But so how do they use that distance measure like to actually make predictions about Gabriel's rating for Nope?
So once you've calculated the distance between Gabriel and every other user,
Mm-hmm.
you can find the users who are most similar to her,
Okay.
her closest neighbors on that movie rating map.
Okay.
And those are the users whose opinions we're going to consider most important when we're trying to predict her rating.
So it's like asking your friends for movie recommendations, but on like a massive data-driven scale.
It is exactly like that.
Okay.
So we take a weighted average of those neighbors' ratings for Nope,
Okay.
and that gives us a prediction for Gabriel.
Oh, wow.
And the closer a neighbor is, the more weight their rating carries.
It's like Netflix is using math to figure out who my movie's soulmate is,
Yeah.
and then using their ratings to tell me what I'll like.
That's a great way to think about it.
It's both amazing and terrifying.
It is pretty powerful technology.
Yeah, and you were saying earlier that this isn't just for movies.
Oh, yeah. Definitely not. This approach can be used for all sorts of things, like product recommendations on Amazon, personalized music playlists on Spotify.
It's like, how does the internet know me better than I know myself?
It's all based on the data we generate through our online activity.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
It is pretty amazing what they can do with all that data.
Okay, so that's it for part 1 of our deep dive into customer targeting. We went from click-screen data and cookies to the power of RFM and the magic of collaborative filtering. Join us for part 2, where we'll explore these tools even further and see how they're being used in the real world.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were talking about collaborative filtering and how it's used to power those super accurate recommendations we see on Netflix and Amazon and Spotify and all those places. It's wild to think about all that math going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing is, those algorithms are always learning as we feed them more data. It's almost like they have a mind of their own.
It's true. So remind me again how this whole collaborative filtering thing works. All right, so remember that example with the 7 people and their movie ratings? We were trying to predict how Gabriel would rate Nope, even though she hadn't seen it.
Yeah, and you were saying that it's not just about finding people who like the same movies as Gabriel. It's more about finding people who have like similar patterns in their likes and dislikes.
Exactly. Even if their overall taste in movies is totally different, think about it like you and your best friend might not agree on every movie, but you probably have a good sense of what the other person will enjoy.
Yeah, like even if my friend hates romantic comedies and I love them, we might still agree that The Godfather is a great movie.
Exactly. It's those points of agreement, those shared preferences that matter in collaborative filtering, and the source material uses this really cool analogy of a map to explain this.
Oh yeah, the map analogy, I remember you talking about that. Remind me how that works.
Okay, so imagine each user is like a point on a map. The closer 2 points are, the more similar their taste in movies is. The farther apart they are, the less similar their taste. And you can actually calculate that distance using a formula that takes into account the difference in their ratings for each movie they've both seen.
So if someone rated all the same movies I rated in almost the same way, they'd be like my next door neighbor on this movie rating map.
Yeah, exactly. And the people who are closest to Gabriel on this map, her neighbors, so to speak, are the ones whose opinions we're going to pay the most attention to when we're predicting her rating for Nope.
Okay, so Netflix is basically using math to figure out who my movie soulmate is and then using their ratings to predict what I'll... Like, it's like a super sophisticated matchmaking service for movies.
That's a great way to put it. And this approach isn't just for movies. It can be used for all sorts of things. Product recommendations on Amazon, personalized playlists on Spotify, even friend recommendations on social media.
Wow, it's like everywhere. So this whole personalized internet thing is really just a bunch of algorithms trying to figure out what we like.
Right? They're crunching numbers, looking at our past behavior and the behavior of others like us.
So every time we click on something or watch a movie or buy a product, we're kind of training those algorithms.
That's right. Every interaction we have online feeds into this massive pool of data, making those algorithms a little bit smarter and a little bit more in tune with our own personal tastes.
Okay, so we've talked about how companies use our online behavior to target us with ads and recommend products, but what about our actual purchases? We talked about that RFM framework earlier, but I think it deserves a little more attention.
Yeah, I agree. RFM is a really simple tool, but it can be super powerful. Remember, it stands for recency, frequency, and monetary value. It's basically a way to segment customers into groups based on their buying patterns.
Right, like Andy, the regular coffee buyer, Betsy, the once-a-monther, Crystal, the bulk buyer, and David, the unpredictable one. But how do companies actually use this information in real life? What are some examples?
Okay, so let's say you're running an online clothing store. You could use RFM to identify your most valuable customers, the ones who buy a lot, spend a lot, and have shopped recently. These are your VIPs. You want to give them special treatment like exclusive discounts or early access to new products.
Right, keep those big spenders happy. What about the other groups? How would you approach people who haven't bought anything in a while or people who only make a big purchase every now and then?
That's where the strategy comes in. So
Yeah.
let's say you have some customers who used to buy from you all the time, but they haven't made a purchase recently. These are your lapsed customers. You might want to try and win them back with like a special offer or an email reminding them about products they looked at before.
It's like a little nudge to remind them that they love your store. What about the customers who only buy every once in a while, but when they do, they spend a ton of money?
Right, those are your high-value, low-frequency customers, and they need a different approach.
Mhm.
You might want to focus on building their loyalty with personalized recommendations or even invite them to special events.
Like, treat them like royalty. RFM really is like a secret weapon for understanding your customer base.
It is, and just like with collaborative filtering, there's software that can automate that whole process. Even small businesses can use this stuff.
Okay, so we've covered collaborative filtering for predicting preferences and RFM for segmenting customers based on their purchase history. Are there any other tricks that marketers use to understand our behavior online?
Well, let's go back to those cookies we talked about earlier. Remember, they're not just for tracking individual users. They can also be used to analyze bigger trends and patterns in website traffic.
So, like figuring out which pages are the most popular or how people are navigating through the site?
Yeah, exactly. It's called web analytics, and it's really important for improving website design. If you know where people are getting lost or leaving the site, you can make changes to keep them engaged.
It's all about making the website work better for the user, but can you use web analytics for more than just design? Can you use it to measure like how well a marketing campaign is doing?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Let's say you launch a new ad campaign. You can use web analytics to see how many people clicked on that ad, what pages they visited on your site, and whether they actually bought anything. You can even track things like how long they stayed on each page and what they clicked on. It's a ton of information.
So you can actually see if you're getting a return on your investment with your marketing.
Yeah, and you can use that data to improve future campaigns. Make sure you're spending your money wisely and that you're reaching the right people with the right message.
It's like a constant feedback loop of data-driven improvement. But I gotta say, this is starting to feel a little overwhelming. It's like there's this whole other world of data analysis going on behind the scenes.
It can be a lot to take in, but remember, the goal of all this is to make things better for the user.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better, but I still can't help but feel a little uneasy about how much information these companies have. It's like they know everything we do online.
That's a valid concern. And while we haven't talked specifically about the ethics of all this, it's a really important part of the conversation. Technology is only as good as the people using it.
Well said. I think we've covered a lot in this part of our deep dive. We've explored collaborative filtering, RFM, and web analytics. Welcome back to the deep dive. I feel like we've really gone deep on this one, like exploring this whole world of customer targeting. We've talked about clickstream data cookies, RFM, collaborative filtering, even web analytics. It's kind of crazy how much data is being collected and analyzed like all the time.
Yeah, it really is amazing how sophisticated these tools become. And as we've talked about, they can be really good for both businesses and consumers. But like any powerful tool, there's always a potential downside.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Like on the one hand, all this data can lead to more personalized experiences, better recommendations, even help us discover things we wouldn't have found on our own.
Right. It's like having a personal shopper and a team of recommenders all in one. But then there's that other side, the part that makes you wonder if maybe they know a little too much.
Yeah, exactly. It can feel kind of invasive, even a little creepy when those ads for like hiking boots follow you around the internet for weeks after you looked at one website. It's like they're reading my mind.
It's totally understandable to feel that way. And it goes beyond just targeted advertising. There are real concerns about data security, the potential for misuse of information, even the possibility of algorithms perpetuating biases.
That's a scary thought. So where do we go from here? How do we balance the benefits of personalized experiences with, the right to privacy and the need for responsible data use?
That's the million-dollar question, and there aren't easy answers. But our sources do point to some steps that both companies and individuals can take.
Okay, like what? Give me some hope.
Well, first of all, transparency is key. Companies need to be more upfront about what data they're collecting, how they're using it, who they're sharing it with.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like a secret mission for users to try and understand what's happening to their information.
Right, no more hiding it in the fine print. But transparency is only part of it. We as users need more control over our own data too, don't we?
Absolutely. Users should be able to easily opt out of tracking, delete their data if they want, and even see how their data is being used to create those personalized experiences. It's about giving the power back to the individual.
Okay, that makes sense. So is that where this whole cookieless world thing comes in? Is that the answer to all our privacy concerns?
Well, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Phasing out third-party cookies will limit the amount of data companies can collect about our browsing habits across different websites.
Hmm.
But it's important to remember that companies are always adapting and finding new ways to track us, like using device fingerprinting or browser-level APIs.
So it's like a never-ending game of cat and mouse between the data collectors and the privacy protectors.
In some ways, yeah. But the good news is that awareness of these issues is growing, and there's more pressure on companies to be responsible with our data. Privacy is becoming more important to consumers, and that's a good thing.
That is encouraging. It sounds like we as consumers have a role to play too. We need to educate ourselves about how our data is being used and make informed choices about, the websites we visit, the services we use.
Exactly. We vote with our clicks and our dollars. We can support companies that prioritize privacy and hold accountable the ones that don't.
So what's the one big takeaway for our listeners today? What do you want them to remember about this whole customer targeting thing?
I think the most important thing to remember is that customer targeting is a powerful tool, but it comes with responsibility. As we become more aware of how our data is being used, we can demand more accountability from companies and make choices that align with our values. It's a two-way street.
Well said, and that's a wrap on our deep dive into the fascinating and sometimes a little creepy world of customer targeting. We've learned a lot today, and I hope our listeners are walking away with a better understanding of how this whole thing works, the tools, the trends, the implications. Thanks for joining us, and keep exploring.